Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be painting a watercolor peach on Procreate using the watercolor brush set that I sell on Etsy, and I'll link that down in the description. And I'm going to start off with a reddish color for the peach. And before I started the video, I sketched out a quick sketch of my peach so that I wouldn't take so long sketching it out. You can do as many peaches as you'd like. I'm just doing one large peach so that you can see the different effects of the watercolor brush that you get in my watercolor brush set. And I'm going to be using my watery fuzzy brush. This one is my overall favorite brush for watercolor on Procreate. And obviously it depends on what type of look you're trying to achieve. If you want a more fuzzier look, you could use this one or a watercolor rough one in my set. And if you want a more hard edge type, you can use the watercolor hard edge or dark edge or hard dark edge brush. And I'm just using a mix of yellows and oranges and reds. And then I'm using my watering bleed, which is basically acting like water. And what you do is you just mix in the colors that you want to mix in together, and it acts like water. That's why it's called watering bleed. And this won't work as a normal brush because whatever color you use, it will not show up as the color. It's just going to be invisible unless you use it to blend a color in. And of course you can use a watercolor brush for a smudger and you can smudge it in. And I am smudging and using my watering bleed brush at the same time, so I'm just switching here and there. And you can also get my free watercolor palette in the description, so just look down there after the video. And I want it to have a stainy sort of effect because when watercolor dries, you can sort of see this like watery splash sort of texture. So I don't want to blend it in too much because then that wouldn't look like watercolor. So I'm blending it in here and there using my watercolor brushes. And now I'm going to work on the watercolor leaf using a green from the palette. And for this, I'm going to be using a thinner brush because my watercolor fuzzy brush is pretty thick and it's super sensitive to pressure. You can adjust the taper if you know how to, and in a later video I might show you guys how to use the brush studio, but for now I'm just going with the basics. And now I'm just smudging it on Alpha Lock. And as you can see, I just keep undoing and redoing just because I want to see what each stroke sort of looks like. But in real watercolor, you can't really undo your strokes. So if you want to be authentic and not like redo and undo, you can do that too. And also because when you're doing real watercolor, you can sort of know how thick your brush stroke is, but on Procreate you really have to like draw it to test it first. So I also included a watercolor eraser in that pack so you can erase it. And then I'm just going to selections, selecting the background, doing invert, and then I'm just coloring it white because I want to add a background to the peach. So I'm just picking a random pink color. You can do whatever color. And then I'm using my watercolor eraser to just erase some of the white stuff because I didn't adjust the threshold enough. But also because even if I do adjust the threshold, sometimes it still isn't accurate enough to depict the white areas in the paint, the areas I painted in. just because watercolor is super diluted and the opacity is super low for this. So when I went in with a selection, it couldn't really tell where the color was. And now I want to add a mini splash type of background, so I'm using my water fuzzy and I'm just adjusting the shape so it's super big. And then I'm just drawing this random shape, and then I'm adding in some red to give it more color. And then I'm going to smush it down so that it's not that round. And then I'm just changing the background so that I can adjust the peach color again. And so there is the peach. And so now I'm going to do my weekly setup. So I have my bullet journal, and then since my theme for April was white calla lily, I'm going to draw a white calla lily in the bottom right corner. And I'm just going to speed this up super quickly. If you guys want to know how to color it in with more detail, you can watch my white calla lily video, or you can watch my April bullet journal setup. But for now, I'm just speeding the video up so that I have more time to do the other things. And then in the center, I'm going to color the stamen orange. And I didn't actually really like my main monthly calendar for my April BuJo setup, so I kind of redid it. And I used wrinkled up craft paper to cover up some of the ferns. And I'll post that on Instagram later on if I have the time. Anyways, right now I am just doing my mini calendar, and then I'm doing the same setup that I usually do, or I have done for the last month, which is the to-do thing where I have the list of the days on one side and then the to-do on the other side. So you basically just put a circle or a triangle for to-do and events on the day that you have it, and then on the to-do side you write down what's happening or what you need to do. And then on the left hand side of the spread, I'm doing hours of school. You can do hours of chores, hours of work, whatever you want. And then I'm using my accent color, which is this orange. And I didn't include me doing the hand lettering because I covered that up later with craft paper. And I know my font was like a calligraphy font for this month, but I don't really know why. I kind of really like a serif font, so later on I change it. And I know that would be kind of boring if I did like a serif font for all my months, but I really like the look of the serif font, and I really like drawing it and coloring it in. So I'll show you guys what I mean by that later. Anyways, I'm crumpling up some craft paper and then ripping it to fit over my hand lettering. And in February, I sort of went overboard with the craft paper, and I put way too much craft paper. So then in April and March, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to use any craft paper. But then in April, I kind of realized it looked kind of plain without the craft paper, so I'm going with that craft paper again. And then I'm going to add craft paper around my calla lily. I should have done that beforehand, but now that I already did it, I'm using my X-O knife to cut around my calla lily. And of course, it doesn't have to be exact because you can just color in the calla lily later. And I'm just cutting the edges. And make sure not to press too hard with your X-O knife because you don't want to cut the paper. But luckily, our journal paper is super thick, so it won't cut that easily. And my X-O knife is kind of dull. So I just made the stem and the flower a little thicker, and I think I made the stem a little too thick, so later on I kind of covered that up. And then I traced out my serif font, and then I'm going in with my InkJoy pen. It's actually one of my favorite pens. It's just that when you go over it with marker, it sort of smudges the marker, or it smudges the pen. but that's actually one of my favorite pens, so I'm using that. But if I want to combine marker and ink, I usually use my Pigma Microns. But just for regular lettering or just doing my regular to-do things, I use this one because it flows more easily and it's a gel pen, so it goes smoother. And then I'm just filling it in with just some lines that are closely densed or packed together. And I didn't actually intentionally make the April in the center of the page, but it ended up being in the center. And then now I'm just using my other accent color, which is a lighter chrome yellow, to write in some lines. And so there is my weekly setup for the first week of April. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with others. Buy my Procreate watercolor brushes and make sure to grab that free peach palette down below. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!